Hello everyone and welcome back to Paperback Journeys, where today I'm going to be giving my spoiler review of Red Rising. If you haven't already read this book yet and you'd like to see my non-spoiler review, then you can click up here. In this video I'm going to be talking about my favourite and my least favourite scenes and characters and just the moments that really resonated with me from the book. So we're going to be diving a bit deeper into this story. So in my non-spoiler review, I spoke about how, for the most part, I really enjoyed Red Rising, and I am excited to read and review Golden Sun, which is the next in the series. But let's talk about some of the big moments and kind of like relive them together. So in the opening scenes, I feel as though we're hit with a lot of information. Some humans have migrated to Mars. There's an underground society where they're mining for helium-3. And the vision is that Mars will one day be terraformed enough so that it can be populated by humans. One thing that was really fantastic about my reading of this book was that I went into it completely blind. I knew that it was set on Mars. I knew that it was about an oppressed people, but that was it. And so when the reveal happened and I found out at the same time as Darrow that Mars is already inhabited by humanity and that big cities on the surface have already been built, that was like a jaw-drop moment for me. I didn't see it coming. And the funny thing about that is that if I had read the back of the book, then I would have known that going in. So I was really kind of glad that I didn't read the synopsis before starting the book. I just took it on pure recommendation from other booktubers and other people that I know. The world building is pretty heavy in the beginning, especially with the technological terms that are made up. You've got gravlift, helldiver, haulback, the laurel, holocans, head talks, and it's just these terms are hitting you one after the other in the first few pages. I suppose that's just one of the things that you're supposed to expect that from dystopian sci-fi. So Darrow is a helldiver on Mars, and basically this means that he operates the machinery that is digging into the Earth. And actually, no, it's digging into the Earth. Is Earth called Mars on Mars? When you dig into Mars, is the term you're digging into the Mars? No, that don't sound right. Anyway, whatever Darrow is digging into, he's digging up this substance called helium-3, which makes Mars habitable for human life. And he is not only the youngest in his colony to be a helldiver, but he's actually one of the best. There was one line early on that really made me laugh, and it was unintentionally funny, I think. I don't think it was meant to be funny, but Darrow is talking about his wife, Io, and I don't know if you picked up on this. He says, when my wife, Io, was little, we had a nickname for her, Little Io. Hey, have you met my wife, Io? Yeah, I met her at the Christmas party. Yeah, nice girl. You're gonna laugh at this. When we were little, right, we had a nickname for Io. We didn't used to call her Io. Oh no. Oh wait. What did you call her? We used to call her Little Io. Little Io. Yeah. When we're introduced to the community and the different tribes that all live underground, at first glance, it seems cozy, I felt. Like, they have hard jobs, no doubt about it, but they have taverns and they have festivals and they have like a real sense of community where everyone's quite frequently all gathering together and singing songs. And I was like, not so bad. Like, this isn't that bad. Unfortunately, it's not long before you realize that these people are effectively slaves and they are competing for things like sugar and milk rations against each other. And they see these really simple things as luxuries that are being sent from Earth. And then you realize, oh yeah, actually, yes, so bad. So bad. I was thinking they've got a better social life than me. I never saw. What are they complaining about? Get back to work. I'm joking. I'm joking. Can you imagine if I just fully sympathized with the golds? I came out as pro-gold. I was like, yeah, bloody Reds. All they do is moan. I tell you, it's the golds. It's the golds that are holding up this economy. It's the golds. That's who I worry about. The job creators. So yeah, they've got this contest and it's called the Laurel. And it's just basically like whichever group of hell divers or whichever group of miners are most productive that month, I think it is, they get a reward of all these supplies from Earth. And even though Darrow and his crew clearly deserve the win, for some reason, the Golds, or the people that are in charge, decide to give the win to Gamma, the Gamma tribe. And I'll be honest with you, this didn't really make any sense to me. Like, even from the perspective of an evil person, of course, like it's unfair, right? I know that's the intention, is that this is an unfair society. But even with that in mind, let's say if you were organising this evil game where you were pitching people against each other in order for them to dig more minerals out of the ground, and you wanted them to dig, then you would want them to be competitive. If you're always giving it to the Gamma tribe every single time, then eventually what's going to happen is that all of the other tribes are going to go, you know, let's just do the bare minimum, you know, because they win it every time. So let's just do the bare minimum. Don't go above and beyond. Don't work too hard because there's no point. And similarly, the Gamma tribe are going to go, boys, do the bare minimum. They always give it to us, so don't worry about it. What I'm saying is, I'm not trying to give these Martian slave drivers any advice. I'm just saying, you're being counterproductive, boys. I spoke in my last review about how there were certain moments in this book that made me realise that this was maybe intended for not quite a YA audience as I initially expected it to be. And one of those moments came really early on where Io is put to death. And because of the gravity, the difference in gravity on Mars, when people are hung on Mars for crimes, they need assistance in order to have a quick death. And so Darrow has to walk over to Io and grab her by the ankles and tug down to give her a quicker death out of kindness to her. And I mean, that's heavy, isn't it? That's pretty heavy. That's a step beyond the Hunger Games and Ender's Game and all that kind of thing. And that, I think, was the moment where it really clicked for me that, yeah, this book is pretty dark. I know I said earlier as well about how I just didn't have any idea about the twist that came at about the 10% mark of the book, where Darrow realizes that there's a city above ground. And I felt like that was so brilliant. It added a new context as well to the competitions that are happening underground between this tribe and that tribe. Kind of trivialized them a little bit, didn't it? This whole society is all competing against each other, kind of taking shots and creating rivalries, but really their lives are just an illusion. And they're thinking, oh, these people are my enemy, these people are my enemy, all pointing fingers at each other. It's not fair. And while they're all doing that, they're not focusing on the real enemy who is just stealing from them, and they're taking everything from them while they're just fighting for scraps. Oh, that's my milk. Oh, that's my sugar. And don't worry, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get too political. I try not to get too political on this channel, but this message, this theme of the book really resonates with me, and it probably informs about 90% of my political beliefs. I really enjoyed the scenes where Dancer is showing Darrow around the city and we get introduced to the rules of the city. There's lines that are painted on the floor that certain colors have to follow, and if they deviate from these lines, then they get in trouble with the law. And certain colors are allowed in certain sectors, but the golds can go wherever they want at all times. I thought this whole section was done so succinctly and so economically in terms of the writing that I understood the rules of this society in just a few pages, and I thought it was just really great. I will say though, one of my criticisms of the book, and the part of the book where it jumped from escapism and interesting concept of a dystopian future into just like silliness for me, was the part where they built Darrow a new body. And yeah, I didn't like this bit. I understand that it's a sci-fi, and so, you know, building a new body for someone and giving someone enhancements is kind of par for the course. Yeah, I know it happens in sci-fi, but I think it was just how strong he became, which pushed me past the limits of my suspension of disbelief. I mean, now Darrow can crush a rock with his bare hands. When he punches a punch bag, he can punch through the punch bag. And this, for me, you're making him too strong. It's not believable to me. I thought what they were going to do when they said that they were going to make him stronger and faster, I thought they were maybe going to turn him into like the world's strongest man or give him the strength of like a gorilla. But no, man, that's not enough. He's stronger than any mammal that has ever existed. And then when he arrives amongst the other golds, we actually see that he's not just strong for a red, he's strong for a gold. He's probably one of the strongest ones there, with the exception of one or two. He comes up against this great big hulking guy, I think his name's Titus, and he shakes him by the hand. And this guy's huge, right? I'm just imagining this huge like jock, you know? But he's a gold, right? So he's even more powerful, even more godlike. And when Darrow shakes his hand, it's like he almost breaks his hand. And this is a problem that I had with another book that I read called The Name of the Wind, where the protagonist is just the strongest, the fastest, the most musically gifted, the cleverest, the greatest in every single area of life, the best looking. You know, how am I supposed to root for a character like that? I just feel like it would have been so much more entertaining if he was the weakest one there. You know, if science can bring him up to a certain level, but he can't quite reach the level of the other golds in terms of physical prowess, you know, his physicality. But what he does have is the street smarts that he learned down in the mines. He may not be as strong as them, but he's scrappy. I would have rooted for him harder if his strength didn't come from something which was given to him by science, but rather something that was hard-earned through obstacles that he'd overcome in his past and through the hardships of his past. And his history and his sneakiness and his strategy. And, you know, it's not just the scene where Darrow almost breaks Titus's hand when he shakes it. It's also, I think there's a pink, and in this book, the pinks are designed for pleasure and to be beautiful. And this pink looks at him and says, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." What are the rules? Like he's the best in every area. And again, this is probably the biggest hurdle in the book for me to get over. And it's a book that I mostly enjoyed, but this is just one of those things where I was like, oh, it was a bit of a bugbear for me. One of the most impactful moments for me, and one of the darkest moments, was the passage. Do you remember that bit that I'm talking about? That was pretty crazy. I'm talking about the scene where Darrow is paired up to fight against Cassius's brother. Two naked young lads, no weapons, just pummeling each other, bloody, until one of them is no longer alive. Yeah, again, there's that darkness again. And all of this is a way of kind of achieving an accelerated Darwinism, you know? It's kind of like survival of the fittest and culling the weak. They get rid of 50% of their applicants, just like that. That scene was so heavy, so dark. The character was kind of like begging for his life. Oh man. And it just reaffirmed the darkness that exists beneath this pristine veneer of the society that the Golds have created. Yeah, that was so heavy. And it's immediately after this point that I feel like we really get into the meat of the story, where all of the group and all of the survivors are split into 12 different tribes, and they're told, look, it's basically divide and conquer. These are the teams that you're in. Just try and take over all of this land. And that's when things start to get even more intense and even more intriguing. And that's when the kind of political maneuvering of Darrow starts to take place. And that is where things got really fascinating to me. The thing I liked about this game is that it had layers to it. So what I mean by that is that on the surface, it looks as though this is kind of like a test to test the ability of the players. But I think more than that, it's actually like a lesson. And the lesson is, if you don't have power, really bad things can happen to you. And it's one thing to tell a person that, but to show them and to make them feel it and to actually strip away their power. They wanted to kind of instill a fear in the Golds of what it would be like to lose power, and also create a hunger to maintain power. Over and over again, we're shown horrible examples of these privileged kids who have known nothing, they've never known any kind of hardship, and they can't imagine what it would be like to lose that privilege. And so with them lacking that imagination, what the overseers of this game have done is said, we don't need them to imagine, let's just show them, let's make them feel what it would be like to lose all of that power, and sort of show them how bad things can get if you don't conquer and oppress all these other people who we see as lesser than us. Oppressing people is shown as the only solution to this problem. Either you oppress people or you will become the oppressed. I thought this was a really effective and a great example of brainwashing people and indoctrinating them when they're young and just as they're about to enter the society. And I thought it was like the best thing about the book, really. It was really effective. By the way, I'm saying it was the good thing about the book. I don't like that they did that to them, right? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. I'm not saying it was good that they did that to them. I also felt like this was a really great setting and a great vehicle to be able to introduce a lot of characters really quickly, but also very clearly define them from one another, so that I never really got confused about who was who. They all had their own distinct personalities and their own motivations, and I thought that was done really well. Especially with how many characters there were, I think it's a pretty big achievement of Pierce Brown to be able to make all of these characters, which could have easily blended into one another and become confusing about who's who and who's done what. I never felt like that was the case. So yeah, like I say, that is a great that's kind of like a testament to Pierce Brown and his character work. I found one of the most interesting characters early on to be Titus. So people were being abused in this book in the worst ways. And I really felt genuine hatred for Titus. And so when we discover that Titus isn't actually a gold, but he's like Darrow, you know, he's undercover and he's actually a red that has been sent in to infiltrate. I didn't see that coming at all. And I thought, you know, originally I thought this is just some really deranged, privileged guy, and he's just got fantasies of torturing and conquering people. But actually, what we find out is that his fantasies of inflicting pain on these golds isn't fueled by any kind of I mean, he is deranged still. The things he's doing is really horrible. But they're actually being fueled by vengeance. And we're given a hint into his history and how he's witnessed people from his life suffer at the hands of these people. And so he wants some of that vengeance. Yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting twist, although it didn't make me like him. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, he's doing what he's doing. But then again, you know, he is this freed slave whose loved ones have been tortured. And so you can see how that's going to have psychological damage on a person, even though it's not these people around him that did it to him, it's their society. And he knows that these people are all being trained to uphold that hierarchy that has kept him and all his loved ones down. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty complex. Another interesting thing about this is the kind of switching of allegiances, right? So Darrow now finds himself in a position where he is going to execute one of his own for crimes committed against his enemies. So that's, and he's not really doing this out of a sense of justice or anything like that. He's doing it more out of strategy because he thinks that Titus is going to ruin everything for him. And also my allegiance is switched as well, where, you know, as a reader, because when it came to Cassius facing off with Titus, I mean, Titus is deranged, right? And he's done these horrible things. And Cassius is kind of nuts as well, but it felt like he was the lesser of two evils, but it still made me feel dirty to be rooting for a gold over a red. How could I? And I think, again, that's one of the big strengths of the book, is kind of muddying the waters between who's wrong and who's right. Good. I also really liked the kind of strategy that Darrow was implementing as he was systematically moving from territory to territory and conquering them. And he did it a few times. He probably did it maybe 4 or 5 separate times, but it never felt repetitive because every time the strategy was different. You know, whether that was making allies or whether it was hiding inside the corpses of animals or slipping behind enemy lines and setting their supplies on fire or using food as bribes, kind of leaking false information to the other prisoners, releasing prisoners and leaking false information, people betraying each other. The strategy kept changing and switching and adapting. And so, yeah, like I say, it never felt repetitive. And I felt like that was another strength of the book. There's just something so enjoyable about seeing someone making a plan and then watching them execute that plan and seeing it all come together and pay off. Yeah, it was really satisfying. Of course, you know, you want things to go wrong in a story. If things don't go wrong, then there really is no story. But it's also cool to see a protagonist grow over time and is in kind of like build up the character in your mind, seeing how effective they can be, seeing how clinical they can be. There's one thing in books and movies and TV shows that I really like, and that's seeing someone who is really good at their job. That's just enjoyable to me. And Darrow's job is conquering. At this point, I started to see, all right, I started to get it, you know? Started to see, all right, I see why these books are popular. One of the other elements that I liked about these games was how Apollo, who's like one of the overseers of the game, was always trying to sway the odds in favor of the jackal. And the jackal is the head of one of the opposing tribes that Darrow's facing off against. The idea that in this hierarchical society that the Golds have set up, this game is supposed to be the one place where everyone is on an even level playing field. It's supposed to be all about survival of the fittest. And this is the one place where a meritocracy actually is supposed to exist. But even here, corruption has infiltrated the game to sway the odds in certain people's favor. Even among the Golds, there are levels of Golds. Just as there are high reds and low reds in Red Rising, there are Golds and there are bronze. So when Darrow, towards the end, starts to create this kind of free and equal tribe that doesn't rely on slaves and masters, and he starts to succeed in spite of the odds being stacked against him, in spite of their kind of low station in life, it undermines the game in terms of how the overseers want this game to go, but it also undermines the society that created the game, and it undermines the message that they're trying to send to these kids. And I just thought that was great. I mentioned the jackal as well, and I liked the ominous shadow that's cast over the characters of the jackal, this kind of distant enemy that they haven't come face to face with yet. He's mysterious and ominous. And hearing about him and building up his reputation from the distant part of the valley, knowing that he's growing in size, I thought that was really well done. And it's also kind of fun to imagine it from the other perspective as well. Darrow builds up his reputation and builds up his army, and it was just fun for me to imagine what the Jackal's people were all thinking about the Reaper, and that's the nickname that Darrow gets, right? The Reaper. Such a good nickname, and in fact, it is so good that even when the Jackal meets Darrow, the Jackal admits, like, you have the better nickname. You have the better nickname. I thought that was pretty funny. When we first meet the Jackal, he's actually pretending to be someone else, and he allows himself to get taken prisoner. Immediately, I knew it was him. Like, that wasn't a big twist for me. He's pretending he's this character called Lucien, or maybe that is his real name, but he doesn't let on that he is the Jackal, basically. And yeah, that wasn't a big twist for me. Immediately, I was like, this is the guy. Darrow, come on. And Darrow knew it as well, but he was just allowing himself to go with it, to pretend that he was getting tricked, because Darrow's the best in every way, you know? But when the Jackal does properly reveal himself as the Jackal, he lives up to his reputation as this really dangerous character. I kept trying to guess like what the Jackal would be like before we got fully introduced to him. And a part of me was wondering, is this another one of Apollo's tricks? You know, are we going to meet the Jackal and he's going to be this little coward that's been elevated by the overseers of the game as a favor to the Jackal's father? Is he just going to be this little weakling with a boosted up reputation? But no, I mean, this kid is stone cold. He stands there for a good while with a knife through his hand, and he's just, even though he's going through a bit of pain, he's just very calmly speaking to Darrow and the group, and he's looking amongst them all, and he's negotiating. I think Darrow describes him as reasonable to the point where he becomes inhuman, which is a great way to describe the character, I think. Towards the end, I have to admit, things took a little bit of a turn for the worse for me. When they got the grav boots and they flew up to Olympus, pretty interesting in theory, but I don't know. That felt a little bit contrived. But after that, when Darrow is given an option about where he's going to pledge his allegiance beyond the games, that's where things got really interesting to me. He pledges his allegiance to Augustus, and I was like, yes, good decision. Good decision. I thought he was going to be righteous. I thought he was going to be stupid and kind of pick the lesser house, but he didn't. And he did the smart thing. He aligned himself with his greatest enemy. And so I'm excited to read the next book in the series and see which direction that goes in. And the next book is The Golden Sun. And if you'd like to see my review for Golden Sun and continue this journey with me through the world of Red Rising, then you can click up here to see my review. It's going to be a spoiler review of Golden Sun. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and happy reading.